Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out on this semi-snowy, chilly night for this amazing panel on independent filmmaking. I'm Jayce. I am a SAG-AFTRA member, woohoo, and an actor that has turned into a writer-director. So I'm so interested in hearing what our amazing panel has to say. I think I just want to kick things off with sort of a basic question just to get us all into this. What drives you guys to produce your own works? And yes, what drives you guys to produce your own works?
Money.
Yes, money.
I mean, I think filmmakers ultimately have in common that they need to say something. So that's what sort of pushes me forward, is that I have something that I think other people might want to hear. I hope they do.
Yes, and I feel like we should do a little brief intro, because I don't know if we did that. So Ingrid, you've done some amazing work, all of you have. So why don't we go down the line and just give a brief intro and also talk about your film that's been nominated this year. So apologies.
Sure. Hi, thanks for coming, by the way. I'm Ingrid Jungermann. I am a writer-director. Other people say actor because I'm in my own work, but I leave that up to you guys. I've made a couple web series, one called The Slope, one called F to 7th, and my first feature premiered at Tribeca last year and will be released this spring.
And won an award.
Oh yeah, it won Best Screenplay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I forgot that part.
Hi guys. Is this working?
Are you
Hello.
on?
Hello. I'm Melody Roscher, writer and producer. Produced a film called Christine that was out this past year. And what drives me to filmmaking, or just making my own work, is just beyond having a voice and wanting to get something out there, is just creative controls also. And being able to really feel like you have the ability to put something out there that someone isn't going to make you dumb down at some point in the process to make it more palatable, I guess.
Mel, you also did James White, didn't you?
Yeah, I did James White.
White's like my favorite movie. Yeah. I'm Josh Locy. I did a film this year called Hunter-Gatherer. We premiered at South by Southwest. Our actor is Andre Royo, and he won an award at South by Southwest for his acting, and he's really amazing. Even people that hate the movie love Andre Royo. So he's my
always a good sign.
He's like my saving grace. Like, and yeah, I would just kind of piggyback on what they said about making stuff. I think we all kind of share the same thing, and for me, it's a little bit too about discovery. And Ingrid said, like, we have something to say, and for me, it's oftentimes just figuring out what it is I have to say and why I have to say it. And even the film that's out this year is me figuring some shit out.
Which makes the best film sometimes.
Hopefully. Yeah. We'll see.
Mike Ryan. I'm producer and also actor, with my dues are current.
Woohoo!
I'm paid, card
You got
carrying.
your screeners.
Yes.
Voted.
Yeah, I produced a lot of independent films, Junebug being one of the most well-known ones.
Woohoo!
One of the lowest budget films to get an Oscar nomination for Amy Adams. Faye Grimm, Choke, Turin Horse, 2 Todd Solondz films, 2 Kelly Reicherts, and then recently Free Indeed, which has got 4 nominations at the Spirits.
So we should just leave? We're just done?
So, and, yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about the acting. I come from an acting background. I kind of came to film late. I was a theater, still am kind of a theater snob. And so for me, it's about really trying to bring projects to actors that Hollywood and a lot of other more conventional films just can't deal with. So role really, I'm very biased towards female-driven roles, and stories that are centered around the journey of one actor or one character. So that's my whole kind of focus.
You're preaching to the choir here, for sure. Thank you guys very much. So I'm hearing passion and money and figuring things out and actors, like this room, right? We're all doing that. So I guess the first step is an idea, right? And a script. So do you guys want to talk about your writing process, what inspires you to write, and and how you came about, whether it's producing or writing the script that you're nominated for.
My movie is called Women Who Kill, so it was about my love life. It took me about 5 years, I'd say, total.
To write the script?
To write the script, yeah.
Wow.
I wrote it pretty quickly, the first draft, and I had written a couple features before that, but this is the movie that I feel like kind of broke me as far as learning how to write a feature. So I wrote the first draft pretty quickly for, many drafts over a couple years, tried to get it funded, couldn't. That's about when I just kind of felt like I was going to throw my hands up, and I did a second season of my web series just to sort of do something. And then somebody told me, after many, many drafts, that it was really great for a first draft. And so that was heartbreaking. And so, after I got over the pain of realizing she was right, I did a page 1 rewrite, and then it took, a year or so after that to find a private investor who then made the movie happen.
Wow, that's amazing dedication, and obviously it paid off for sure. Melody.
I'll talk about Christine because it was an interesting process that I'd never been through before. A production, I make commercials, produce commercials for money, and my production manager told me he had a script, and I said, "Oh, can I read it?" And this is probably 2012, and I read it, and I mean, in that moment, I was like, I have to make this movie, have to, and that was Christine. And so he spent, at that point, he'd already been writing it for a couple of years. He spent 2 more years writing it on his own in a bubble, sometimes sending it out to friends and getting some criticism back. But so he spent about 4 years total writing it on his own, doing research, meeting with people. And then we brought on a director, and then they spent 1.5 years revising it. And that process was very difficult, but really...
Throwing things at each other.
Yeah, and every time it got better. You take a couple steps back when you try something and it just doesn't work. But it was really cool, actually, to see 2 people who were introduced to the project in very, very different ways, one for 4 years longer than the other, duking it out and coming up with new ideas and coming up with new scenes and new characters. And then at the end, we had the script. And it was a really special process, I think, to be able to work on it that long and together.
And he's nominated for Best First Screenplay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Spirit Wars, yeah. So my film is about people who are not at all like me, and it was inspired by a friend of mine, and I set out to write this movie about a heroin-addicted pimp in the 80s, and I thought it'd be real cool. And
because they're always cool.
yeah, always cool. You get the music, the funk music, and
The 80s.
Yeah.
Heroin.
Yeah, easy to shoot and connect with. So I started writing this movie, and it was terrible. Of course, it's awful. But there was something in it that I was attracted to, and something in it that connected me to it. And I just kept plugging away at it, and at a certain point, I was like, okay, I'm gonna remove all the drugs, all the cursing, all the violence, all of the things that get in the way of these characters actually experiencing what they're going through, and I'm gonna rewrite it. And that was 3 years into the process I made that decision. So it was, and then it's been another 2 years working on that version of it. And it's a very simple movie. It's I don't think anybody watches it and thinks it should have taken 5 years to write, but that's what you do when you have that kind of time, I guess, when no one's banging down your door.
Well, that's what it takes.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the simplicity of it, it's very deceptive. It's not easy.
Yeah, for sure. So, so that was it. And the guy who I wrote it about hated it. He ended up passing away, but he hated it so much. So the movie's dedicated
Did he see the
to
finished
him.
film?
What's that?
Did he see the finished
No, he never saw the film. He passed away. But it's dedicated to him whether he likes it or not. Yeah.
Mike, you've been involved with many films. What do you look for? And you also write as well.
Yeah, I mean the priority for me, because I have to raise the money and find the money and put it together, and And so for me, really the collateral, the real currency is the name actors. And that's how I can raise the money, unfortunately. When I'm making difficult films that are about, for example, Free Indeed, which is about a Pentecostal preacher who tried to save a child, and in the end, the child dies. We're talking about, some of the most darkest type of material. I can really only raise money with having, a name in the lead. In Free Indeed, which was shot in Memphis over the course of 18 days, there's a cast of 22 speaking roles, and there's only 2 actual actors who are not local to Memphis. It's David Harewood and Edwina Finley. It's an all African-American cast. But I have to raise the money, and that's the actors. And so I design or help design the screenplay so that it's really going to be apparent to an agent that this is awards material. And everything I do, the goal is to get back to the Oscars. That's really the goal, is to make a performance that is memorable for life. And that's what I'm going for. That's what's at stake. I've been at the Spirits 3 times, won Best Actors at Sundance and Venice and Cannes and all these other festivals, and it's all shaped around trying to get the most dynamic performance, and the whole plot has to be geared around the arc of the character. So that's how I work with the writer, and that's the goal. So that when I call the agent and say, this is something that's really dynamic for Liam or somebody that's going to completely challenge everything, they believe me enough to read it and they want to take it on. And so because all of my material is extremely difficult and not commercial.
So I'm hearing takes a long time, requires dedication. So I guess the next question is,
I would say too about his actors, they're both nominated for Spirit Award. Not only is he nominated for the Cassavetes Award, which is the best film under $500,000, they're also nominated for Best Actor and Best Supporting Actress, as well as Best Cinematography. But that's really hard to do with $0.
yeah. And it's on that topic, how did you guys go about raising the money? Did you write for budget? Did you back into the budget? Did you, bring on many of you are producers, produce your own work. Did you know, okay, I need to write a $200,000 film? Was it written as a $5 million film, but somebody said, no, we should just make it for $300,000 with unknowns? How do you budget once you've written it, right? You've gone through this amazing process. You've honed it to 5 years, 4 years. Josh, you're many years. Mike, you're out there trying to raise funds. You're trying to get actors and attaching agents. How do you come up with this budget, this number? Do you come up with the money first or the budget first?
I'll start. I wrote for a budget. I knew that I would never get. I was planning on kickstarting my movie and doing it for like $80,000, piecing it together. So I wrote towards that. And what happened for me is that the limitations provided opportunities to find inexpensive magic. Like, where do if I'm not gonna have any money, how do I make?
I like that phrase.
Inexpensive magic. It's my next film, sequel to Practical Magic. But it was just like, how do I make this movie stand out? How do I do what I'm trying to do and tell a story I want to tell with no money? And then it forces you to I don't know, nobody's seen the movie, but there's scenes in the movie that I think are very magical and very small and are free. They're free to shoot. You just say, you walk, yeah. So thinking of free things that are beautiful.
And did you play the well-known actor game, or you knew from the get-go, no, I'm just gonna let this inexpensive magic embrace, the talent I'm gonna cast and infuse everything else?
I was open. I mean, I cast. No offense to anyone here. I cast on Craigslist. I came here. I did L.A. casting, New York casting sessions, and rented out a casting studio, and was just looking for anyone to be this lead, and I could not find them anywhere. And then I had a mutual friend who knew Andre Royo, and she gave it to him, and it turned out that people really like that dude. So our investors were our favorite. My movie's produced by David Gordon Green, And the investor said, my favorite director is David Gordon Green, my favorite actor is Andre Royo. And I was like, well, you manifested this movie into the universe, you should give me some money. So, I mean, that's also after a million other meetings that didn't go so well.
But there's also a timing. There's such a timing element to all our films up here. So yeah, how Ingrid, how did you come about your budget?
I always write for budget because I'm always broke, basically. So I started in theater, and so my first thing really was writing plays and focusing on performances and actors, and that's how I kind of moved into film. Made some short films, and that didn't really change that much until I started to learn a more cinematic language. I went to NYU grad. I learned a lot there. My web series
for acting or for film?
For directing.
For directing.
Yeah, and when I made my web series, I also knew I had no money, and so I just shot. I tried to make them short, sweet, funny. With really, and have guest stars with great actors. For my film, I wanted to learn a little bit more and up the stakes, open the world up. The scope was a little bit bigger, but I was still only focusing on $200,000 type of budget. That went up a little bit, but ultimately, in a weird way, I'm writing this movie now where I'm not limited at that much at this point on what I'm writing, and I still find myself containing myself.
Right.
Because I haven't ever been told, oh, we can shoot there, and you can. And I'm like, I don't really know what that means. So I'm getting used to that idea a little bit. With each film, I just try to grow a little bit more and make the scope a little bit bigger, and maybe one day I'll have like a crane or something.
Right. Right. And for our audience, and many of you out there know, but that involves less characters, less locations, or not necessarily when you just feel it in your gut. I mean, you've all made things prior to this commercials, web series, so you're like, ooh, gosh, this insane shootout in the French Riviera, that's not gonna work, so let's put everyone in a public library for 90 minutes.
I had a really interesting experience. That it wouldn't be responsible to say is the way to make a film, but it's something that happened, and I think it can happen again. We were given, so for a film I made called Simon Killer, we were given a budget max of $300,000. No matter what happened, we could contractually go over that number, and we didn't have a script. And we wanted to shoot in Paris. So we went to Paris, and the director started coming up with an outline for what this film was. I mean, he had an idea in his mind, but it just wasn't on paper. But we couldn't stay in Paris for 6 months while he wrote the first draft. So we had
nice.
It would have been great, but we couldn't. So basically, we started just telling people this story that he'd come up with for a sketch of the film, and getting them involved from the ground level. And because we had about a month in Paris to basically engage people at an artist level and really get them involved, and because of that, we were able to make the film more cheaply. And so when
like locations, vendors, actors, designers, part of the team.
Everything. I had a fanny pack full of cash on me at all time.
Who doesn't?
Every day I had to go get 800 euro out the ATM because that was the max. And we would just do our best to get what we needed. So that involved, if for anyone who has or has not seen the film, we shot a lot of it in working prostitution bars. I forget what they're, hostel bars, what do they call them? I can't remember anymore. But so that involved negotiating with prostitutes daily and having them know that I have a fanny pack full of money on me.
Oh, the producer's life.
Which meant they wouldn't leave. They're like, yeah, you still need me for the scene, so I can be paid more. But then, something came up towards the end where the director said, I want to shoot in the Louvre. And we were like, ha, 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 ha. But we stayed an extra, we sent everyone away and said no one's working anymore except for the DP, and we stayed for an extra 2 weeks to try to get permission, and we did. And we shot for, I'm not allowed to say, but very little. So there's writing, I do believe that it's way more responsible to write towards a budget, but when you're just endlessly passionate, people catch on. It's very contagious if they can be part of something and you respect them and you want to collaborate them from a very, very sincere level, a lot more becomes possible.
Wow. That's incredible. Josh, we talked about the money. Mike, you told me a great story in the green room. I think it might be a good time about writing for Rosanna Arquette.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm averaging around 2 or 3 features a year, so I have to go to a lot of different other funds for money, and so the metrics, exist. Sundance now is over, and the list of what was sold is there, and I'm in the drama space, which is a very dirty word, and I'm often in a formally aggressive dramatic space, which means stories told by a very aggressive narrator in a formally inventive way. So I'm 2 degrees into the hole. So the metric exists of what the possibility of what the number is that I'm going to raise, because I talk to investors whose full-time job or whose staff is to pay for movies, and they can clearly see. So I kind of pretty much, based on the story, have an idea, and then I just try to round up based on what the name is I can get, and I think about what that could be. Generally speaking, for drama in the indie space, you can't really get close to $1 million budget unless you have at least 1 A-list. And in the past 3 years,
in this climate, that's like A-list.
Yeah, A-list. And generally, we're looking at a lot of films that were at Sundance that were in the 700,000 space having 2 A-list for drama. We're talking about serious drama, not comedy.
Big shift from a decade ago.
Oh,
big
yeah,
shift.
completely. Oh, I mean, the world changed in 2008, and it really hasn't come back. Although in the past 3 years with Netflix and Amazon, it's changing a little bit, but so those are real metrics, those exist. So that you can start there. But in terms of where I start, I have a film that just announced today that's in narrative competition in South by Southwest, and the filmmakers were first-time filmmakers, a pretty well-known poet, a couple, and a novelist, and they came into some money, and they had a number. They actually had a number. They said, we can spend this much amount of money on a film. What can we do? How can we get the best actors possible? And I said, well, the most eagerly, the most undervalued demographic in acting is women over the age of 40. And I constantly sit with agents, and they tell me, and they pitch me actors or actresses that don't have good roles. And actresses over the age of 40 want to have a role in which they can sleep with the 25-year-old. Why can Ben Kingsley sleep with the 25-year-old girl? And a woman who's both smart and not apologetic about being smart, and aggressively intelligent and not apologetic for that can both show fear. And so I told this to the writer-director, and we designed a role based around that idea. And we got Lena Olin and Rosanna Arquette. And it's all, again, designed around this character and about the fact that Lena Olin is an unbelievable talent, that her instrument's she doesn't have enough opportunity to exercise it. And so we wrote for that. And then, so in that case, I backed into a certain number that the writer-director had. But a lot of times it'll be a script, I'll see the potential for a great role in there, an awards role, and then I'll know what that number is roughly if I get a pretty significant top B name, and then try to back it in. And if it's an ensemble, we try to build it with as many solid. I mean, Junebug, Amy was well known, obviously. If you're in a Spielberg film, no matter how small the role, you're a rising star. But to modulate to A-list, which Junebug did for her, we needed 4 pretty solid actors, and that film was really financed by an actor, Ben, who was at a TV show at that time that was popular that I can't...
Ben McKenzie.
Yeah, Ben McKenzie. It was actually what financed the film, yeah.
Was he on the OC?
So I'm hearing, again, writing for budget, so being smart about it, passion, not negotiating with prostitutes.
All it takes.
your team, having your team around you, David Gordon Green, or saying I have a relationship with talent agents, or I have a friend that is doing really well as an actor. How can I write an out-of-the-box part for this person and write a role for someone that is being underserved but can help me get my money? So I think, because people all the time, I think they write scripts and they're like, I have no idea what the budget is, and it's going to be, I'm going to raise $10 million, I'm going to raise $5 million, and I think the reality is you have to think about how can I make a film for well under $1 million, well under, in this market, because that's my next question is, there's a lot of content being made out there right now, more than ever, which is great. So we have access to cameras, to everyone can be a cinematographer, an editor, do sound on your iPhone practically. So it's all like within our reach. So there's a lot more content, but I think the quality, I wouldn't say is less. The quality, you still have that group of films that are amazing, but there's so much more noise out there, and there's so less films maybe going to the theater. Now they're going to these platforms, which is great, the Amazon, the Netflix, Hulu. So what is your advice for our audience and for myself about what makes your film stand out? What makes your first feature, your second feature? I have a friend that's like, you have to do 5 features before you can get into Sundance or get noticed. I think, what is your little bit of advice about what makes your film stand out and cut through, your friend that's got a camera that's making a movie?
I mean, it's something that I write about also. It's really important to understand that the feature film format, which I call the 90-minute fixed chair experience, for anybody under the age of 35, if you said to them, you're going to sit still for 90 minutes, not get up, and not touch your phone, and be focused on one thing, that is waterboarding. That is waterboarding. So the medium of the feature film
Apparently
experience...
It's coming back.
Yeah. The feature film experience, the fixed chair feature film experience is really not what it was in terms of what certainly millennials want. So if you're going to make a feature film, it better be something that only can be done in the feature film space in terms of its cinematic. That is the whole business plan of the distributor A24. So Krisha, which is the film that we all aspire to, it's a film that won Best Film at South by Southwest at A24 release that was made by an actor in Austin for $20,000 with his family, and he got a 2-picture deal out of it. That is an amazingly cinematic expression, and that only could be done in the cinema space. So if you can make your idea in TV or in a short 10-minute thing for YouTube, or in VR, do it. The last place you should be with your dramatic idea should be in the feature-length space, unless you're thinking visually, because time for comedies and casual entertainment in 90 minutes is done. It's just done.
Good advice.
We hired a, kind of piggyback on that, for our movie, we hired a theatrical booker, and we were kind of like, all right, where do we play this? Get into college towns, like, get this movie out there. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, he's like, he told us the average age of people that go to the theater, to the art house theater, and watch a movie is 65. And he said, you can have a movie playing on a college campus, let the students get in free, average age 65. Like,
wow. 65-year-old students.
Yeah. So it's, I have this one friend who makes movies that just star old people, and he makes a lot of money. It's great. He made this movie, I'll See You in My Dreams. It made like $9 million last year. And then he made, this year, a movie called The Hero, sold for $3 million at Sundance. Like, yeah, do that, make it with old people.
I think to speak back to a point that Mike made, though, is writing roles that are just the people want to play makes such a difference, especially if you only have a little bit to make your movie and you have $20,000 and you're living in Austin or you're here. Because, I mean, nothing goes further. I think you can make a beautiful cinematic film, but if the actors just don't, if actors don't want to be in it, then it's just not as strong. I remember the first time I really felt like I was working with a professional. I was working with Sarah Paulson, and she came on set, and it was her first day, and I was like, oh, that's what actors do. Okay, like now I get it. Now I understand that, you know, with someone dedicated and great who loves the craft, you'll automatically be more noticed at the end of a project. even if they're not hyper famous, if they're committed and they show up.
I would have, I think, before the election said the best rises to the top. I no longer feel that way. To your comment about a lot of content out there, I think I really do still have this gut instinct that if it's pretty good, it's gonna, you know, be noticed. I think focusing on the writing is cheap, it's free. But I also think, you know, understanding that it's about perseverance and that it takes years and years, and your friend said 5 features, and that's not necessarily true, but it is, you know, dedicating years to something like any other career where you're starting out small and then you keep making things. And then eventually you'll make your first feature, and then eventually, hopefully, you'll make your second. But I just think it's understanding that this is a really long road, and it's like manic depressive, but as you all know, but I think, you know, what else are we gonna do? We should be doing this.
Let's talk about how important your team is to you, because I know, you know, that's the key to it, is to acquire like-minded people that want to go through this crazy process with you. Do you guys find that you work with the same people, that you kind of have this little team, this little band of outsiders that kind of you're navigating this world and making things together and growing with? Melody, I feel like you have some insight into this.
Yeah. Team is everything, for me, at least. So I made 3 films with the Borderline Films team, and we grew up together because of making those films together. And I mean, to say that they're family is to put it lightly at this point. It's such an intimate space to make a film with someone.
And even those were Martha, Marcy.
Yeah, so Martha, Marcy, May Marlene, Simon Killer, and James White were those 3 films. And yeah, I mean, I think it's the more seriously you take your team, the more you love them, and the more you really be thoughtful about your choices, just the better it is and the better it gets. But and I believe in loyalty and really growing together, but at the same time, different projects also call for different people. So it's also being open to that and understanding that, because I think the best professionals do. They know that they aren't drag and drop for every project. They won't enjoy everything the same.
I was going to say more of what you were saying, the second part, which is I came up through the art department. I'm a production designer. I build sets, and when I first started out, I wanted to always work with the same people because they gave me a sense of security. And as they became unavailable for projects or I had to rely on someone else, I realized that the team is very important, but they inform the project in such different ways that I'm curious to work with like all new people. Maybe not every time, but I love the people who I made Hunter Gatherer with, and I'm very excited that they were part of it, and I got to meet them, and they made that movie way bigger and way better than I would have made it by myself. But I'm curious to meet other people, because I'm selfish to learn and grow and expand my own knowledge base from people who've done it. So there's a balance. So.
I think the ideal is to find people that you continue to work with. That's sort of the dream, both crew and cast. But I think it's also being aware of your challenges as a filmmaker, and when somebody may not see eye to eye, but can add something to your vision. Specifically, I worked with a cinematographer because I knew that I wanted to have a more cinematic piece of work, and he brought that, and he taught me so much, and I taught him something. He'd never done comedy, so it was kind of like a nice give and take of figuring out who's gonna fill in the space for you.
Right, because it's a collaborative medium, you know, like many of us actors, but when you make a film, you're looking for all these different viewpoints and the right kind of team that's gonna tell you the truth, but add, you know, exponentially what they can bring to it. So you wanna sort of find those people that you can also, in the beginning, make things, I think, on the cheap, if not for free, you know, like a great cinematographer that's coming up, and you can sort of build that little team early on. Mike, do you have a team that you...
I don't know. It's pretty fluid for me. I'm kind of a lone wolf. Each film has its own team, and my general situation is I go with a line producer who I then make into a producer who teams with me for each film. and that commitment often, is outside of time and money. So they're very long. So that one, a lot of times with writer directors, I try to break them out of that desire to have a team. And sometimes bad habits form with people. And I try to, a lot of what I do with writer directors is I also modulate their career. I take people who've made a great, kind of handmade film, but have never worked with a real actor before, and help them write a role for a real actor so we can get more money and a bigger budget. And then I try to bring in other people into the fold that will expand their vocabulary to some degree. And so a lot of what I do is help writer-directors move to another level. So sometimes, I think there's a romanticism connected to wanting to keep your team all the way through. I think there are some directors who've been hurt by maintaining that locked-in attitude, and eventually they'll come out. But I think that there are a lot of people who are older and more experienced who are willing to work with younger people. And it's great if you bring people up with you, but it's also great for an artist to experience collaboration with somebody who's much older, who's done a lot of work.
Great. And let's talk about the money. How did you guys raise the money once I know, Mike, you talked about it sort of being the lock of the actors. Josh, do you want to talk a little about your experience crowdfunding?
Yeah, we actually didn't have to crowdfund.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, we didn't have to. I thought we would, and I through my producers, Sarah Murphy and April Lamb, they connected. We went to a bunch of their contacts for production companies, and they were getting good responses, which was rare. They were like, we're actually getting good responses from this. We don't normally even get that. So let's keep pushing and trying to get the money in a more traditional way. We ended up connecting with the company, John Sloss's company here in New York called Cinetic. And they're traditionally a sales agent and a managing company, but they got into film funding and finding money for movies, small movies. And I met with a guy there named Jesse Kahn, who had 2 investors that he wanted us to meet, and we met on the phone, and those 2 investors ended up giving us our money. So it was a bit serendipitous, but again, it was a lot of work before that, a lot of failed attempts and a lot of
Development.
Yeah.
Right. Melody, how do you put the magic to the money?
It's been a bit all over the place, and I'll admit that for several of the films, we didn't have all the money. Most of the films, we didn't have all the money when we went to shoot them, which I don't recommend, but it happens.
You start with enough to get it in the can, almost.
Sure.
Or less. Or the fanny pack.
Yeah, you can start with the fanny pack. I don't recommend doing it that way, but if you find yourself having to, what we did was we just begged people for equity, little chunks. And always
making these little private equity deals.
Yeah, exactly.
Contracts.
Anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000, and just creating a patchwork and having those people reach out to their contacts, because typically I feel like people who have that to spare know other people who have that to spare. And then leaving, for example, if you're shooting somewhere like here, you have a tax credit, and you can take a loan against that. And so you leave that for last when you absolutely have tapped out all of your equity, and then that's what you're going to have. And unless you have some idea for how to raise for post, but for Christine, we did something much more typical. We got foreign sales projections, and they literally just make your cast into numbers, and something I was a lot less used to at that point. And it's a very weird feeling, but it also helps expand who you can approach for money. You can have a much more elevated conversation with the investors at that point, the financiers. So, both ways work.
Did you feel like with the earlier ones where you were trying to did you feel like once you got the momentum going, people were more willing to oh wow, they're week 1 into shooting this, I should probably give them the money?
Absolutely, and I think that's a great point, because that's actually why we would start without all the money, is because without that pressure, people would start backing their money out. They'd find another project that they want to invest in instead, or they would just get bored with the idea. A lot of these people don't expect to make their money back.
Right, and then when you're actually shooting, you're we're doing it.
Yeah,
so
it's hey guys, we can't make it to week 3 unless we get more money. You guys gonna help us? We're on set, we can't do it. So there's part of that. And sometimes it just ended up that way, and we didn't intend for it to be. The other thing about the reality is that people get scared when the pressure is on, and they take their money out when you're already in too deep to turn backwards. So, you know, that's when at least I found it beneficial to have, if you're gonna make a film with that uncertainty, have several producers, have several people who feel like they can do outreach, because it's just really hard to make a movie. It's hard to budget your time every day, and it helps to have a lot of people who can do that together.
And the tax credit is an amazing thing for any budget level. It's like, it appears to be complex, but from budgets of 50 grand, as low as 50 grand, you can use the New York State tax rebate, film credit, and it's pretty amazing. You get like 30% back of qualified expenses, so you can go to a rich uncle, the dentist down the street, and be like, hey, I guarantee you're gonna get, you know, $40,000 back in 18 months. And they're like, okay. You know, so that can help you close the gap in your financing. Ingrid, how do you actually get the cash?
Well, I was so surprised nobody wanted to throw money at a nearly all-female cast lesbian comedy suspense movie.
Shocked. I totally would. Sounds awesome.
So after I got off over the shock.
It took a while to get over the shock.
It did, like 5 years. I had a friend named Stacy Passon who made a movie called Concussion. And she was really supportive of my work. And after, you know, I was struggling to get it made, she said, I think you should talk to my investor who made Concussion. And I gave him the script and he passed. And she said, you know what, write another draft and I'm gonna push him again to read it. And she did, and he came in as the main investor. So I think having her, sort of like a friend, mentor, a woman who had made another lesbian film, had a relationship with the investor, that was very much community made that film happen.
And passion, I'm hearing. You know, like if you don't believe in the idea, you're not gonna be there either making it without the money, you know, having the mentor. You have to stand by, the idea has to be, you have to be so passionate to convince somebody to put up, you know, $50,000 in private equity.
I would say, too, echoing kind of what you said, is that take any piece of validation you can get and exploit the hell out of it. Like I had a production company, they were like, oh, we like your movie. I was like, your name's on the script now. Like, it's just like on it.
How'd that happen?
Yeah, whoops. And it's just like, yeah, I'm making a Rough House Pictures movie now. Right. And then Andre Royo gets on, and he sends me an email that says he's interested. I'm making an Andre Royo Rough House Pictures movie.
There's his son on the script cover too. How'd that happen?
Yeah, exactly. And then like my producer had worked for Steve McQueen, and I was like, my producer worked for Steve McQueen.
On the cover of the script.
Whatever name I can like attach to this project to make it more legitimate, I was going to exploit the hell out of it. And then now I just act like I did it all.
On your own.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think passion goes all the way into the investing because, you know, the reality is there's no more risky, absurd investment than film. And that's, you know, they're clearly proven, you know, and so I'm really into this class of investors that are actually a form of artists. So an artist is somebody who's really passionate about a subject or wants to communicate, and he or she puts his ideas into a communicative form. An investor is somebody that wants to empower that kind of communication. And most of the films, the industry is driven by people who are not market driven. Megan Ellison being at the top of the pile. She's not she doesn't want to lose money, obviously, but she's not in this business to make money. And so understanding what the theme of your film is how I activate the passion of an investor. Not only are my films character driven, they're also issue driven. So we made a film with Lauren Ambrose that got a Spirit nomination for Best Actress called About Sunny. And it was about a working class woman who had 3 jobs and couldn't deal with her child and was offered to give up her child for adoption. And we had one investor who came in for half, and then he brought us to Texas to his investors in his restaurants, and we pitched it, and all the people who were raised by single moms put the money in. And in the end, we got a Spirit nomination and almost no distributor and no return. And before the Spirits, I couldn't attend because we had no distributor and I couldn't afford to go. But the investors circled around me and said, what kind of business is this that, you know, we're here through the needle's eye and we're not making any money, and what was the point? And I said, you made this film to honor your mother. You made this film to honor the work that she did to raise you alone, and did the film not respect that, and is that not the case? And they said yes. And when it was on Netflix, we had over 20 pages of single mothers writing about the film. And so that's the return on investment, and that's what that passion is what I try to ignite in investors. Their return on investment is really about trying to bring passion into the world and to bring light onto marginal voices which are otherwise not listened to or spoken to. And that's where I focus on. I have made a lot of films about minority groups or types of voices that have been tried to be silenced.
So it's almost like the Medicis. You're reaching out to like a class of investor that is sponsoring the arts for art's sake.
Yes, and they believe that the quality of life in the world is better by this level of participation in the arts, and that's really what drives the arts in America. It's not, you know, it's not driven by profit, you know. It's return on investment based on the fact that we are a higher culture, is a better place to live when we have these types of important films in them.
And it doesn't hurt when a movie like Moonlight creeps through and like explodes like it does. You can like ride that tailwind a little bit.
Right, because this amazing panel, you will all have moonlights. Let's, you know, knock on wood. And there's every season there's 2 or 3. So like the Spirit Awards is the breeding ground for the voices of, you know, the next year's Oscars and all that. But you were going to say
Yeah, I
something.
wanted to just add, passion is definitely great, I think, but ultimately, I think you have to handle rejection more than anything. Like, passion is, you know, passion and honestly ego. Like, you have to believe in yourself so much because pretty much everybody's going to fall away around you for the long haul. And you have to believe in yourself and blindly. And then also just handling rejection because you're going to have it over and over and over again. And then you just have to kind of like go through the heartbreak, let yourself go through that, and then get back up and then expect another no. So I think understanding that, like, you know, there's also the down times, but that's okay because you can stand back up from that. But it's not all about, you know, conviction.
I was going to say too, it's less about passion. I mean, it's about not having any other options. Right. It's like there's the story of this very vague relay of some This American Life thing I heard, but there was a commander with the army, and he backs them up to this cliff to fight the battle, and all the soldiers are like, what are you doing? We have nowhere to run. And he's like, exactly, let's go. And so they won the fight and took over.
In my movie, they lose.
Then they lost. It's a very bad analogy.
But
you have to set yourself up in a world where if you don't get this thing, there's no other option. It's like you're going to jump out of the goddamn window if you don't get it.
It's kind of like getting a job as an actor. I mean, like, why would anyone go through what we go through in those rooms? Because what else are we going to do? We're not qualified. I'm not to do anything else. So I guess this is the subject of a whole panel in itself, but you finished your film, you financed it, you've shot it. What do you do with it now? What's the first step? The festivals? Do you try to go straight to distributors? Like, what was your process? What's the next step? And I know many of you are probably in that process as we speak, even though your films are all very acclaimed at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of indie films or character-driven films, you know, the festivals are a great stage to present the film to investors. But there are a lot more great films that are made than play, let's say, at Sundance or South by Southwest. So a lot of great films don't get into those top 2 festivals. And that process then is of really trying to get a distributor to pay attention somehow. And it's very difficult because we have these windows of Sundance, and now we're going into South by, and then there's Tribeca, and then Cannes starts, and it's tough. But there are a lot of examples of films that have not made those festivals that have still gotten distribution and acclaim, and sometimes it's by getting critics to see them, but it's tough. But the festival, generally speaking, is the target.
We premiered at South by Southwest. We won an award there. We got amazing reviews out of South by. We did not sell our movie for 9 months, and the people who bought our movie hadn't watched it until then. Like, so I don't know. I mean, it's like you can do everything you want to do. If your movie's not at Sundance or Cannes, you're kind of screwed. Like, it's an uphill battle. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you make Krisha, and then you're good.
We competed against Krisha. I had a movie there called Creative Control, and I think we're the second film that Amazon acquired when they started doing that. But we were warned ahead of time. We were like, Cinetic, they warned us. They were like, it's going to be really hard to sell a movie.
And you guys won awards at South by and did really well.
We won one award for, they created it. I think it was like excellence in visual. I can't remember the phrasing. But otherwise, yeah, it's been Sundance. And I'm really curious as to what can be done outside of that. I don't honestly know.
I had the almost same exact experiences as you. And I think what really helped us, with the festival and the award and the great reviews and all that stuff, what we signed with this company, I don't know if you guys know the Film Collaborative, early on, they focus on queer films, but kind of do everything, and they do film festival distribution only. So many times a sales agent will be like, oh, hold back, you don't want to play too many festivals. But for us, it really, it's played at almost 70 festivals now. They negotiate the screening fees for you, so you make money on it. They take a percentage, a pretty hefty percentage, but you end up making money screening all over the world. You may never get the chance to screen all over the world. So teaming with them early on really, I think, helped our film stay alive because you continue to generate buzz. Everybody likes that word. I think that really helped us.
What did you, not to get too personal, what did you average, what was your average screening fee? Like $500?
I think it's like $600 to $700.
And then they take a chunk of that?
Yeah, they take half. And so, but we'll probably make about 20 grand by the end of it.
But even, having the festival, this film Free Indeed, that's in the spirits. So our first premiere was in Venice Film Festival and competition, and we won Best Film. Wow. Then as the festivals continued, AFI and other festivals, everybody got to see it. And right now, to this place, we barely have a distributor, and it's not going to recoup. And that's, again, a very difficult film, a very dark film. It's also formally a very challenging film. It's not a typical type of Hollywood grammar. So that's a worst case scenario. But even the top festivals don't necessarily bring, recoupment or even distribution, unfortunately.
But we hope that they will all end up on the platforms, VOD, iTunes. They'll reach their audience. I guess that being the whole point.
The almighty algorithm will solve our problems.
Of reaching the audience. The rest, you make the best film you can, right? The rest is sort of out of our hands. But I guess to sort of wrap things up and move into questions from our great audience, if you were going to attempt this for the first time and had never done it before, what advice do you have in terms of make a short, make a web series, or some advice you've been given by a mentor? What would you tell our audience tonight?
I think, and I meet with a lot of young writers or people who are starting out, I think it's important to try to first understand where you stand in terms of the form. Are you really somebody who thinks in terms of cinematic language, and are you really driven by cinema language? And if you're driven by dialogue, you should really either be in the theater space or the TV space. And if you're plot driven, then it really should be the long form TV series. And I think that's the most important thing. I just don't think we can have casual dramatists in the cinema space anymore, because it's so not profitable, it's so jammed, it's so difficult that if you're really not speaking in cinema language, you shouldn't be making a 90-minute feature format film.
So look, web series, TV, all the other outlets, there's, tons of, that's a different panel. That's the panel down the hall. But yes.
Mike just wants you guys out of our way, right? Did you see A Ghost Story at Sundance? I didn't get to see it. It's awesome. It's a great movie. My advice from my own experience, what I needed to hear was to find, and it's so cliche, but find and refine my own voice and find what makes it unique. And when you don't like something, really define why you don't like it, and even if it's just a small difference, just find your voice, because that's the only way. The earlier question was, what makes your film stand out? And I think that the only thing that makes my film stand out, if people like it, is that it has a unique vision of the world.
Totally agreeing with what both of them said. I would say just resilience and showing up, because you're going to psych yourself out of it a lot, and you're going to think it's no good, and once you start editing it, of course, and just keep doing it and always show up even when you hate it, make sure it gets finished. And that's kind of really hard to do, actually, as easy as it sounds. So.
I agree with all you guys. I mean, I really love the digital space. Web series worked out for me, and I'm pitching more of them because I have a soft spot for them. There's financial, there's financiers now for it. Everybody's launching a platform, so it's a world that's really opening up. I do think you need a unique vision. I don't think you can, regurgitate the same material, but there's a lot of opportunity in the digital space, and I think everybody wants a TV show now, but I really think that creating web series is kind of going to be the thing for a little while.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And like more and more I hear like a lot of shows are starting in the web space, where they go into Vimeo and then HBO, like high maintenance. So there's a lot of focus on that. But again, it requires, I think, a unique vision. And I hate the word niche, but it's sort of got to appeal to a specific, like audience that can't watch reruns of Newhart or yes, I watch reruns of Newhart. That you gotta want to go and seek it out. So
Ingrid, do you make money doing web series?
You can now, yeah. So I pitched a couple of them. I got a development deal for one that they were going to finance the pilot, but I didn't want to just do a pilot. And then we're pitching another one. So there are the budgets are a wide range. Like I think YouTube Red is like $800,000 per episode. But
wow.
There's high budgets in it. But then like on the lower end, 30, 40, 50 per episode. So it's definitely something.
That's substantial. We have some questions from our audience. I have a question from Ilana for the panel. What general advice do you have for first-time filmmakers? Things to do first, things to avoid. We sort of covered that a little bit, but any advice for first-time filmmakers that we haven't already covered?
I would say get on set in a technical job. Like I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Technician. As a technician, learn how a set works. Learn who does what. Like
you're like, how many syllables?
You have to fix it. Get a job as a technician, so that, and not just an actor. Maybe it is just an actor, but you know who does what, why they're there, because they are your best friends. If you need, you can just nudge a grip to move something if you need it moved. Or I came through the art department, like I said, and I understand fully from every angle the materials and the processes that go into making a film in a very specific way, and it just creates a lot of space and a lot of time to worry about the shit that really matters.
Again, film being a collaborative art, like not thinking, oh, I have a good script and I have a couple actors, but the DP's like terrible, so everything's gonna be shut against a white wall directly into the sunlight.
I would say don't psych yourself out if you hear about a project that is similar, that has a similar theme or anything in common. Just try to make yours better.
Well, you You had that with Christine.
I haven't.
Talk about that.
Yeah, we found out when we were shooting Christine that there was a doc also being shot on the same. It's based on a news anchor who lived in 1974 in Sarasota, Florida, and so Robert Greene, who's a really talented filmmaker, made a film called Actress. Had been fascinated with her for years and had been planning this doc, and we both got the green light at the same time, which I don't think is a coincidence. And I mean, because of that, we've been able to lend very different experiences to her life, like the life of a real person. But I think it freaked us out, and it probably freaked him out at some point in time. But I think ultimately it was really cool that it happened. And also beyond that project, I just think that there is a lot of content out there, and you may hear about something that has similar themes, and just don't let it freak you out.
That's very good advice, because there's like 12 stories or 7 stories, and one always stars Casey Affleck, and he's going to win an Oscar for it, and you're like, crap, I'm just going to burn that script. But by the time you get it financed and made, and if your vision is singular, it'll be a different film. I have a question from Kate. Hi, Kate. For Melody and Mike, how do you choose projects to produce? What is the best way to pitch something to you?
For me, it's about the journey of the main character, and it's about the character's journey, because that's how I base the whole production around. That's how I raise the money. That's how I think about the film, is the character's journey, and treatments. Just 3-paragraph treatments are really interesting and are a good way to present. But when I call an agent, or when I present them with a script, I send the lookbook, and the lookbook is something that now in the digital age is really easy to compose, and it's a 8-page book that kind of gives you the visual, the story, the main character, and the thrust of the whole project. And it's a really great way. It should take less than 3 minutes to read. And I introduce agents to projects through the lookbook. And I'll structure the lookbook often around that main character, but it will show his or her journey, the environment, and the director's intent. And it'll literally take less than 5 minutes to read.
Yeah, I would second that. The lookbook is huge because I think it also shows, if done well, it shows the intention of the filmmakers, the director, the aesthetic generally, the tone. I mean, I think a great lookbook, you shouldn't even have to read the text that goes along with it. It can tell you a story. It can evoke a feeling without reading the text. And I think it can show your taste level as well. Other than that, just well-presented materials, things that aren't half-done or half-baked or sloppy, including correspondence. I guess I'm becoming a little old school with that, where I like a well-crafted email, which is weird. But no, when I'm speaking with younger filmmakers, people who are just coming out of college, it's a lot of really quick kind of text emails, and I'm like, I can't tell how sincere you are. I can't tell how significant this exchange is or not. So that might be a little crusty advice, but
That's a good point. That no one.
Dear Melody, and I know too. So there's a 2-part here. For Ingrid and Josh, how did you sync up with your producers who were passionate about your project and helped you with fundraising? You both have touched on it a little bit, but if you want to elaborate.
I met Alex Scharfman, my producer at NYU grad, before he started the program. He was the dual degree producing student. I was a directing student. And a professor had us meet, and we were going to produce a feature together, someone else's feature. And we just really hit it off, and over the years, I just always wanted to make something with him, so I presented. I had already had the part of the money, and then I said, let's make this movie, and that all happened pretty fast.
And David Gordon Green.
Yeah, I was David Gordon Green's assistant on the movie Pineapple Express. There's some jokes there that are mine. But he's like my mentor, and through him and through his company, Rough Houses, who connected me with April, who was the first physical producer I had on the movie, and she had worked with Steve McQueen, and she had done a movie called B-Side here in New York. And her schedule was wonky. The movie kept moving around, so I needed a second producer. And through my friend and composer, Keegan DeWitt, he introduced me to Sarah Murphy, who had done a movie called Land Ho. She just had Person to Person at Sundance, and she did Morris from America last year, very talented producer. So she came on board, and the three of us just kind of like pushed it through, like I was saying before, with the Cinetic and finding the money.
I'm so sorry. I thought Rough House you made up on the spot, and I was like, that's hilarious.
Oh,
That's a great name.
no. Yeah, it's a real company. It's Danny McBride.
A question from Pasha? Pasca? Passel. We're going to move on. How do you get a completed multi-episode comedy series on a TV network?
It's already completed.
How do you get a completed, filmed and edited multi-episode comedy series on a TV network?
I don't think you do.
Yeah. Usually you pitch an idea, which is a full-on 15-minute presentation pitch to a group of people that are going to buy your idea. And either they decide to finance the pilot and test it and then order the series, or if you're lucky enough, they order the series and they make it. But I don't know. I think now it's a little different with people, in the digital space. Maybe you could you could make your own series and then sell it.
The audience, you need to build the audience.
I had a friend who they did that just on spec. They made a web series basically and put it on YouTube, and they ended up selling it. But I think they were going to remake it. They bought the idea, and then they were going to remake it with the right cameras and the right lighting and all that stuff. So chances are that if you made it, it's probably not up to the specs that they would require for it to be on TV.
But it sounds like an opportunity to try to start putting it out there, building an audience, right?
Yeah.
Getting some press, getting eyes on it.
And when you do pitch and you're packaging something to send to people to pitch to, it's really nice to have links so that they can just, with the lookbook, with your bio.
Can you read the question again, actually? Was it a comedy?
How do you get a completed, filmed and edited multi-episode comedy series on a TV network?
And there's festivals too now, like Austin Film Festival, South by, Sundance had two web series.
There's a TV film festival.
There's TV film festivals too that you can.
In New York, they give out like a development deal.
Yeah.
Fox, NBC. It's pretty.
That's all that stuff is. All these festivals is like free PR and they're free marketing, with a $30 application fee or whatever. But so whatever you can do to get more eyes on it, and I wouldn't hide it from people.
And then Sundance has the episodic labs, but also launched the digital episodic labs too, which are really competitive, but an opportunity to have a really good chance in finding financiers, I think.
And be connected with some of the people you guys have been connected with, that caliber of people that are making a lot of things and are out there. This is a question from Ro. I wrote a play about untouchables in India, telling through personal life experience. I didn't have money, so I went ahead, shot it as a short film, 40 minutes. I won an award from Color Tape International Film Festival in Australia. What do I do with it now? 40-minute film. One-man show. What advice? What would you do with it now?
I'm sorry. So you premiered at the festival, won an award, and then did you sell it? I'm sorry if I. Oh, okay.
And it's 40 minutes.
I mean, I think you could either, if it can be a TV idea, you could potentially try to pitch it as a pilot or something if it works. I think you could also, ultimately it's a calling card to where you have proven you can do this thing, which is a big deal to people, and send it as part of your package. I think there's a couple options.
And also, I think Amazon Prime now, you can upload content. Independent filmmakers can upload their content directly to Amazon Prime. I think there's some, it has to be closed caption. There's some money that you would have to a little bit of money to spend to make sure that it was up to their specs. But I know Amazon Prime is a place where you can do it. Yeah. But good calling card, sounds like. Good time for that. I have a question from Shara. What advice do you have for creators aside from crowdfunding? How to go about seeking financing for a film? How do you find a producer and investor? Some of which we've already touched on. But I guess if you had no contacts, how would you go about seeking financing aside from crowdfunding?
I mean, my experience is that everyone is always, forever, at every step going to tell you no, always, until one person tells you yes. So it's, if you have someone who has a job that's better than yours, ask them for money. Like, I mean, like, just ask people you know.
Yeah, you really have to just lose your dignity and ask every single person. My sister works in private equity, which I still don't understand what that is exactly, something with pensions in California. And she was speaking at this conference, and so I went down with her. I was like, I just want to watch you work. And then I asked like 5 of her friends if they wanted to pay for movies. And they all said,
What'd they say?
well, 2 of them were like, maybe, call me in New York. And then they never wrote me back, but I asked them, but didn't do anything. But like you said, they're all gonna say no, but you kind of have to ask everyone.
But you're also offering them an opportunity they don't get it every day, too.
That's true.
It's like,
That's true.
could be
You
a
do
part of the
have
movie,
something to like to. It's not like you're just begging. You can involve them in something really cool, especially if you pitch it the right way.
I produced a film by a filmmaker from Chicago, Frank V. Ross. And Frank has, by the time he was 30, I think he had 5 films at South by Southwest. He's a full-time waiter, was a full-time waiter in Chicago. And I gave him one of his biggest budgets, Audrey the Trainwreck, I think it was about $35,000. But when he would leave the check, he would leave a little card that would be a website, and it would have a 2-sentence description of what the film was. And he raised small amounts of money, but he had amazing actors because he wrote 4 actors. So he had this name amongst all these great actors in Chicago, and he shot the films very quickly, and he also was just a very talented filmmaker. But he literally built a significant body of work as a full-time waiter.
And I would say, don't throw a party. That never.
Too expensive.
It's too expensive. It's like they taught us that in film school a long time ago. They were like, throw parties.
Bake
It's like,
sales,
no,
car
it
washes.
doesn't do anything.
Because I think everybody comes in, they're like, this is great. Somebody's going to help you. I got to go.
Yeah.
Let me grab some cheese. Bye.
Exactly. Just eat all the cheese and they go.
Well, I think we're about out of time. Thank you. Thank you to this wonderful panel, Ingrid, Melody, Josh, and Mike, and thank all of you. And I hope you all go out and make a movie. Thanks for coming out.